Today, I would like to start with a question for all of you. What is Russia? What first comes to your mind when you think of the country named Russia? Well, let me tell you what I personally encountered about the country that I come from. Let me start with the geography, of course. Let me be your geography teacher for a moment. It is not a secret for many, but geographically speaking, the Russian Federation is the largest country in the world. According to National Geographic, it occupies 1/10 of all the land on Earth, with a territory about 17 million square kilometers. It spans 11 time zones across 2 continents, Europe and Asia. It also has shores on 3 oceans, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic Ocean. The Russian landscape varies from the giant marshes, tall mountains, and frozen deserts. The region of Siberia, where I am actually from, occupies 3/4 of Russia, and this region only is bigger than the whole of Europe. Russia has one of the world's most powerful and longest rivers. It also has many lakes, including Ladoga and Onega, Europe's 2 largest lakes, and Lake Baikal, which contains more water than any other lake on Earth. In addition, Russia has bordered with 14 countries. Since the territory is so enormous, the amount of places to visit is countless. And it's not only because of the geography. Russian history is outstanding and very rich. Therefore, it brought many historical sites to visit all over the country, starting from the traditional Moscow heritage, moving to the Ural Mountains that divide Europe and Asia, and finishing with volcanoes on the far east of Russia. All right, geography is amazing, but what about the Russian language? Russian is a Slavic language, and it is the most widely spoken Slavic language. It is spoken in Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. It is also spoken by many as the second language in much of the Eastern Europe, Caucasus region, Central Asia, and the Baltics. Russian is the 8th most spoken language in the world and is the 2nd most dominant on the internet, after English. Russian language plays a vital role in our history and culture. As it has been found in the Library of Congress, Russian literature has come to occupy a unique place in the culture, politics, and linguistic evolution of Russian people. The 19th century was the golden era of Russian literature. In the modern days, the literature has been the arena for heated discussions of virtually all aspects of Russian life. The novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, the author of Crime and Punishment, Leo Tolstoy, the author of War and Peace, and Anton Pavlovich Chekhov, considered Russia's greatest playwright, are 3 literary figures most well known in the West. Other notable writers included the poet Michael Lermontov and the novelist and short story writer Ivan Turgenev. But the figure closest to the hearts of Russians is the poet Alexander Pushkin. All of these famous writers are very well known around the world, and there are many, many more. But not only is Russian literature unique, it is truly sinful to skip Russian theater and ballet. Trafalgar magazine states that ballet has been nurtured and revived in Russia for over 300 years. Today, this beautiful art form is the national treasure and synonymous with Russian culture. The country has created one of the world's most revered ballet companies, dancers, and theaters. Ballet has been a part of Russia's cultural identity since the 17th century, when Peter the Great, the former emperor of Russia, started a cultural revolution to challenge the West. Many cultural institutions were introduced, but ballet had the greatest influence of them all, touching the hearts of almost everyone in Russia, from the rich to the poor. Since then, ballet remains a treasure of Russia. All right, let me move away from Russian arts and geography. What stands out for me the most is Russian people. They're one of the most warm-hearted and hospitable nations. Yes, right now you probably imagine grumpy faces of Russians and our criminal or mafia characters in most of the Hollywood movies, right? But trust me, for us, this is just a matter of time. Once we open up and get to know each other better, It means that we will keep these relationships for as long as we can, as we value them. Russian culture is also very collectivistic and family-oriented. Therefore, we really do care of one another. Overall, my country has so much to offer, and that is why I'm proud of where I come from. And this is Russia for me. This is what I saw and experienced. Nevertheless, this is not Russia that many foreigners know. Most of you know my country differently. For many people, Russia is the country that occupied and annexed territories of other countries and affected the lives of millions of innocent people. Once this story happened, I had a regular class about politics, and we students had to prepare a presentation about any political event that we were a part of or that affected us. There were many students in class that talked about different conflicts in the world. However, this one girl gave an incredibly emotional and strong presentation about the conflict where Russia had been involved. Disclaimer, I never heard of this conflict before. But she was speaking so passionately and heatedly about it and how it is still affecting her. Closer to the end of her presentation, we all understood why. Sadly, one of her family members' life had been taken due to this political event. It was the peak of her presentation, and I felt exceedingly sorry for her loss. But what struck me the most at that moment is that most of the students turned their eyes to me. At that moment, I, for the first time, felt this unexplainable guilt. I literally just wanted to disappear. I wanted to tell that girl how sorry I am for what my country did. That day she was speaking about the conflict that affected her and her family, but her presentation affected me and my perception of Russia, as well as it made me think a lot about this unconscious judgment based on a person's country of origin. I did not understand why I never knew the other Russia. What might have happened? How did I end up having such a different perspective on my own country in comparison to many others? Let's try and find answers together. Look, I received a good standardized education as I studied in one of the top schools in Russia. Doesn't sound so bad so far, right? But here's the key point why the negative talks about Russia surprised and affected me later in life. The level of state propaganda that has been implemented into the educational institution is enormous. In Russia, propaganda starts as early as in preschool. The Russian government even created and adopted the program called the Patriotic Education of Citizens of the Russian Federation. The aim of this practice is to call forth the national sentiment, to focus on formation of national values, and to create a sense of loyalty towards the homeland. Hence, I never heard anything crucially bad about my country. I had no idea about any negative actions that the government of Russia performed around the world, such as territorial occupations, annexations, human rights violations, and so on and so forth. I only heard it from the Russian government's perspective. Therefore, it is possible to say that I heard nothing. I heard only good things and learned to love Russia. I was completely blinded by my own government and what it actually was doing around the world. Shockingly for me, the stories about the Russian aggression were coming from every corner, and I was extremely reluctant to accept any of those. Therefore, through research, I wanted to find the answers why so many people dislike Russia and Russian people. The existing concept of anti-Russian sentiment that is commonly referred to as Russophobia was discovered. It describes prejudice, fear, or hatred against Russia, the Russians, and Russian culture. It was extremely sad and overwhelming to read. And I asked myself, do people really have the right to have prejudice towards the people of my nation? Yes, unfortunately they do. Russian government negatively affected many countries, nations, and their people. Therefore, they have a full right to be Russophobe, as well as I had the full right to not understand them. Nevertheless, there should be no prejudice towards all the Russians relying on our government's actions. Moreover, most of the Russians that I met along the way do not represent the Russian government whatsoever. Russian culture, with all of the traditions, values, and rituals, does not represent the geopolitical decisions made by one single person that has been ruling my country for years. Therefore, whenever people start expressing their opinions that consist of the anti-Russian sentiment just because there's a Russian person around, I get hurt. Because the government does not define a character of a human being. Do you think that one person that rules my country represents all of us? Do you think that more than 140 million of people share the same views on Russia as our government does? No. Moreover, according to the Public Opinion Foundation data at the end of November last year, more than half of Russians are critical of the government's actions. I understand when people from the affected countries speak negatively about Russia. Once, one person told me, "But Russians do not care. Russians do not want to change anything. You guys keep choosing the same government." The answer to that is simple. We do not have free elections. During the current administration, the government has always controlled elections in Russia, and it never brought many surprises. United Russia, the ruling party, easily wins the majority in most of the regional legislatures as well as in the governor's positions because it is falsified. For instance, the Moscow Times, an independent media source, stated that half of all the votes cast for the ruling party in Russia's parliamentary elections that happened a month ago in September were likely fraudulent, according to analysis of independent statisticians. The opposition even created a system called smart voting that helps candidates that do not represent the ruling party to win. And because of this system, during these last elections, it helped such candidates to win in 12 out of 15 districts in Moscow and in 7 out of 8 districts in St. Petersburg, in 2 major Russian cities. Well, eventually, United Russia still took the majority of seats in parliament due to the falsified electronic votes. You see, not only people from other nations are victims of the Russian government. We, Russians, are victims too. We demand justice as well. But when we do so, we face terrible consequences such as court sentences, threats to harm family members, assassinations, and violations of our basic human rights and needs. And that is what I'm talking about. Many people know Russia as the country aggressor, the country that kills the innocent people, and the country that does not strive for a change. But this is not Russia that I know and represent. What is exceedingly important to understand is that the whole Russia is not its government. Many Russians do strive for a change. Many of us, especially young people, did not want any aggression to happen, and we did not vote for this. It happened. And this is a horrible reality that we did not have any control over. Therefore, whenever you might have a conversation with a Russian person and might want to say, "But you choose your president," please remember all the elections falsifications that my nation has been facing for 2 decades already. If you might want to say, "But Russians do not change," please remember how many people stopped supporting the current administration and started demanding justice. If you might want to say, "But Russians do not care about what the government does," remember all of our heroes who publicly fought to get justice, but were sentenced to jail or brutally killed. Remember Alexei Navalny, who started revealing the corruption system within the Russian elites, and now he's in jail since February this year. Remember all of the students who were expelled from their universities for speaking up the truth. For instance, a student, Yegor Zhukov, who received 3 years of home arrest for posting videos on YouTube about an unjust system of modern Russia. Remember Boris Nemtsov, who gained popularity in the country for being an opposition leader and was assassinated right next to the Kremlin in 2015. Remember Anna Politkovskaya, who had been writing the truth about the human rights violations in Chechnya imposed by the Russian government and became the 24th journalist to be murdered in Russia since 1996. Remember thousands of people who were demanding justice in the streets of Russian cities, but were brutally arrested or injured by the police. Remember an independent journalist, Irina Slavina, who set herself on fire right next to the internal ministry building and wrote in her last Facebook post, I quote, "I ask you to blame the Russian Federation for my death." Remember all these brave people who risk their lives and demand freedom and a better future for us, Russians. And since I heard your perspective on my country and accepted your Russia, please also accept mine.